Okay, we're going to look at buckets. What are they and why do we use them? Well, there's a bunch of words to describe it. Actually, a bucket in the terms of Evergreen is a digital container. Again, it's this concept that is this digital thing where records can be gathered together. In item buckets, they are item records that are gathered together. It's a tool to organize. First of all, throw everything in a bucket. It's organized, sort of. Edit, report on, and share a group of items. And or share. You don't have to do all of these things. You are organizing it just by function of putting a thing in the bucket. You will have the option to edit everything or some of the stuff in the bucket. You can report on that stuff in the bucket. And you can share the bucket itself and thereby share some of the work. These are some of the examples that were given in another cataloging circle that we had, different ways that different libraries are using buckets as a way to keep track of things that needed to be edited or deleted, keeping track of items that have been checked out to teachers or daycare centers or nursing homes, items that need labels printed if you're using the label printing functionality in Evergreen. And then special collections. If you have a bunch of hotspots, how are those being tracked? You can put them all in there. You can make notes and things. Book club books, items that need to go from one branch to the other. And then also shared tasks that are happening. One thing that has been going on during the COVID shutdowns, as I tend to refer to them, is that there has been a pretty massive project for parts to be given to the video collections. And buckets has been the main mechanism for getting a group of records and saying these need to have something related to parts done to them, and to share those buckets with people throughout the consortium to do the work. To access the buckets interface, you have, again, multiple options. You can access it from the cataloging menu, from the home page, and it will take you here. There actually are a couple other places you can access it, but those are the main ones. Those are the easiest ones. And the interface looks like this. You're going to open up directly into the bucket view. But you'll see then to the left of that you also have a tab for pending copies. In the bucket view, there's a drop-down menu where it says buckets, and that's going to give you some options to create a new bucket. You can edit an existing bucket, delete, and access a shared bucket. And then below that are buckets that have already been established. So in this case, we're going to create a new bucket. We'll select new bucket. And one of the things that, as I was going through this, and even as I was reading through documentation, and the many times I've just sat and thought about buckets, which sounds kind of silly, is that there is generally talk about creating buckets, but the labeling here says new bucket. In my mind, I like the talk and the label to be a little bit more consistent, so I would like that to say create bucket. It does not, but it struck me as something. I keep saying create bucket, but the label is new bucket. So to create it, you're going to select that new bucket. It's going to open a modal where you can name the bucket, provide a description if you want to. The more information you have for those buckets, the more somebody else looking at it is going to know what the heck you're talking about. And then you also have the option to make it publicly visible. There are some things that we can do with buckets that can impact our patrons, and so in some cases that may need to be ticked. Generally it's not, but sometimes it is. So we've named this one training, and you can see that there's a description there demonstrating how to use copy buckets. There's also some more information that has been added to that, when it was created, including the time, what was the workstation it was created at, what library was it created at, and then you can see that there is an ID number, a bucket ID number. In this case, it's 12925. So we're going to refer back to that in a couple minutes. So we've created this bucket, and now we need to add stuff to it. There are multiple places you can do this from. So this is where we would then click on that pending copies tab, and we could scan items if we have them in hand, and they will go into this pending copies, and then we can select from this list those things that we want to add to the bucket. We don't have to select everything that's in pending copies. Not everything we scan in there has to go into the bucket. This is where we scan the stuff in and then decide if we want to add it to that bucket. We can also add items to the bucket from our item status screen. And this is a very handy thing that allows us to batch add things to a bucket. There is no place back here in the pending copies that allows us to select a file and to upload that so that we can do a batch add, but we can batch load all of those items in the item status and then select them from the list and then add items to buckets. So that is a workaround for that. We can also add items to buckets from the holdings view, and really anywhere that we have items and an actions menu, there's going to be the option to add items to the bucket. And I do need to clarify, I'm going to pop back here real quickly. When I say pop back, maybe I'll pop back to the right place or not. We're going to be talking about sharing buckets in a second, and so if you want to share buckets, you're going to be clicking that publicly visible. There's another feature that I am confusing with making this publicly visible that uses a different aspect of items and things that isn't really available yet. So if you want to share this bucket with somebody else, you're going to click publicly visible. Now I'm going to click back through here real quick rather than trying to find my. So now we are to sharing the buckets, talking about that bucket ID that was established for that. In order to share that bucket, you're going to give somebody that number, and you will have established it as publicly visible. And then in the buckets menu, you'll click shared bucket, and it's going to open another modal that allows you to add that number in here. You don't need the pound sign that's at the front of it, just the number, and it's going to load that bucket. And then you have the option to do some tasks within that bucket as a shared bucket. Let me pop back here real quickly. So you have things that have been added to your bucket in any number of ways. And now you can do some things to that. keep it in mind that anytime you do something to more than one thing anywhere, whether it's in a bucket or from the item status screen or anything, that the change that you make affects everything that was selected. And sometimes that's the goal, but just make sure that you know what things you have selected and what thing you want to do to them, so you don't inadvertently change something that you didn't want to change in the way that you changed it. So we have these items that are selected, and from here we're going to select edit selected items. Well, in this case it is selected, but we'll look at applying the tags. That's going to be, you can do multiple things. You can add tags to multiple items here. This is very helpful in the case of those donated materials from organizations, or a large group of memorial items, or honor books. You use the tags in so many different ways that there definitely are times when adding them individually is onerous, and being able to put those things in a bucket and then apply tags all at one time is a very helpful tool. You can also request the selected items, and what this is going to do is going to allow you to essentially place a hold for those, and it does open the holds screen. You can place multiple holds from a bucket, whether it be for you yourself, for your logged in account, or for somebody else. You can place holds from there. You can edit the selected items. There are limited things that you can edit within them in general. You have access to most of the things that are in the edit item attributes, but keeping in mind, again, that everything that any change that you make when you have these multiple things selected is going to affect every item that you have selected. So if you change the price for 25 items in there, the price for those 25 items is then going to be the same. In some cases that may be appropriate. In some cases it may not be. However, maybe you're changing the shelving location and you want to change all of these things from wherever they were to this one shelving location. That can be a really helpful thing to do there. You can also transfer items to a marked call number, or you can use this as a place to gather those things and then delete them from the catalog. This is also a place, and this is why this functionality is in here, why people mentioned it, where you can use this as a place to gather those items that need to have labels printed for them. I want to go back to this real quickly. So we kind of skipped over this option when we talked about sharing the bucket and editing. Editing the bucket is going to just allow you to change maybe the description and the title of it. Deleting the bucket is not the same as deleting the things in the bucket. It's not going to get rid of anything from the catalog. It's not going to change anything in the catalog. It's just essentially dumping everything that was in that bucket out of the bucket and throwing the bucket away. So you still have the stuff, it's just not organized in the same way that it was before. Now, that stuff may be in another basket or another bucket too, and it's still organized over in that other bucket. But the bucket that you had, that you are deleting, is gone. The stuff is still there.